Okay. Good afternoon. Discussing creative and budget-friendly trends for retail healthcare food service. You are in for a very, very wonderful treat this afternoon to learn how to make cost-effective improvements in your existing retail venues by applying new materials to create a fresh and innovative look. And since Nancy has such a wonderful wealth of knowledge, I asked her to kind of introduce and give her background of herself before we get started today. Some housekeeping tips. If you have any questions, please type them in the question area, and I will take them at the end of the webinar. Any follow-up, on the last slide, we'll give you some information about how to contact me. And again, welcome to our webinar. Nancy.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope everybody can hear me all right. I am Nancy Inman. I'm the principal of iGroup Interior Design. iGroup specializes in commercial design in a variety of facilities. We do complete hospital designs. We do restaurant design, corporate design, but probably our major specialty is healthcare food service. And I think it's important that people realize that there is a difference in food service design and the rest of any commercial environment, hospital or otherwise. There is, as you all know, being operators, a tremendous wear and tear factor on the overall food service facility within your hospital. And one of the things that we bring to the table as a design firm is the knowledge of where you really need to spend your money to get a material or whatnot that will really serve your needs and be long-lasting. In addition, there are sort of psychological things that go along with what we do from a design standpoint that will enhance a particular area and make people sort of gravitate to it or those kinds of things. So just food for thought, no pun intended, that food service interior design is definitely a different animal than other forms of interior design. I think it's important that you guys sort of know, well, I'm just flipping through slides at a record tape here. Our philosophy as a design firm, particularly with regard to food service healthcare design, we all know that hospitals, it's important that they provide physical and emotional healing. Most of us probably know that a restaurant is designed with a specific intent to create whatever experience it is that they want you to have. A McDonald's restaurant, they want you in, they want you out. They don't make it too fabulously comfortable. A five-star dining experience is very different from that. You have a more comfortable chair, a warmer atmosphere. But the thing that many of you may not realize, and if you've heard my webinars in the past, you have heard this, your hospital cafeteria is where these two worlds meet. And it is possible to marry these two environments and do it successfully. We know that it has to be very maintenance-friendly, able to be cleaned within an inch of its life and still create the atmosphere that you're wanting to create for your customers, both visitors in the hospital and staff as well. There's a few important factors to remember when you're renovating or updating. First of all, you need to know your audience. Your food service retail area in a children's hospital would probably be very different from that in, say, a cancer hospital or a military hospital or something like that. You're catering to a different audience. It's important to choose colors and materials that help create the mood that you want to project. Again, very different in a children's hospital versus something else. That's a good example. In children's hospitals, you would expect that there would be families there, lots of children, grandparents. So you're really catering to a large audience, but the people that you want to comfort the most are probably the siblings and the parents of whatever child may be in the hospital. Whereas an oncology hospital, you're catering to the whole family as well as the patient themselves, and it's a traumatic time for them. They need the warmth and the comfort of something that feels more residential, probably. In addition to all of that, it's important to understand that everybody will have personal reactions to any kind of space. It's very difficult to anticipate what those may be. Me, for example, I'm not a big fan of blue. Some of you may have heard this story before. My father had color blindness, and one of the only colors that was really pleasing to him was blue. So I grew up in a house where virtually every surface that could be painted was painted some shade of blue. All the furniture was upholstered in some shade of blue. And I am really tired of blue. Even at my age now, it is the last color that I'm going to go to. So again, you never know what kind of personal reactions there may be. So we try very hard to cater to a wide audience and hit the psychological feelings that we want to with the colors and materials that we choose. So the question becomes, what should I be looking for? You're wanting to make an impact. You're wanting to kind of show off your stuff, so to speak, but you don't have a giant budget to be able to do that. There's 3 key things that you need to always keep in mind regardless of what you're doing within your commercial facility. You got to have materials that can withstand the demands of that environment that you're in. And you know, some cases it really is a 24/7 operation, and certainly for most of you it probably feels like it is, even if it's not. So definitely durable materials is one of the things. Safety, of course, is a primary concern. You want to make sure that you're not using materials that can be dangerous to the public or to your staff, either one. You consider flooring and what your needs will be there, non-slip surfaces, that kind of thing, what your countertops should be, and we'll review all of that as we move forward. In addition, your facilities people will certainly agree with this one, that ease of maintenance is one of the next biggest concerns. You want your materials to be able to last, but you don't want to have to spend a fortune in time and money both to be able to make that happen. So it needs to be things that are easy to take care of and will last a long time as well. Here we're showing what I like to call the anatomy of a retail food service facility. And I chose this particular rendering that we've done on a facility in the past because it's a good way to sort of see the whole space kind of from above, but be able to tell what's going on. Throughout the webinar, we'll be touching in more detail on each of these different spaces. Now, certainly there are, more detailed spaces that go along with all of this, but these are kind of the high points where you have an opportunity to really shine and create something that helps promote your business and generate some income for your department. We'll go starting with the entry. We'll go through the entire facility all the way through the dining room. In starting with the entry, the first thing you need to do is make sure that your entry is highly visible. And you'll notice in a few photographs here different entries for some cafeterias in some existing hospitals that we've worked on. In some cases, you don't have a lot of flexibility about what you can do, but quite often just making a change in the flooring or a change in what's happening on the ceiling will tell somebody that they're in a new space or they're about to enter a new space. If you'll look, I don't know if you can see where it says making it fresh, but there's a band of red on the ceiling. We didn't have a lot of ceiling height in this facility, but we wanted to do something to let people know you're entering a new space. So we've done something with the ceiling where we've got the red accent, and then the flooring also changes there to, excuse me, to indicate, you've arrived, this is a new space, welcome. The cafe entry photograph is definitely even more pronounced than the other one. There's no mistake where you are. It definitely grabs your attention. It's a different material from the rest of the ceiling. You've got the columns that are treated with small glass tiles. That really tells you this is a new spot. I want to see what's going on in here. The picture at the bottom right is an entry from a corridor where we didn't really have a lot of opportunity to do anything with the ceiling or the floor, so we chose to do it with the wall, and we inserted some resin panels that really draw your attention on the other side of the opening. And then once you get into the space, there is some ceiling treatments that change that you can actually see from the corridor that help you sort of draw yourself in there as well. Keep in mind, too, that whatever mood you set there right at your entry is sort of how your space is going to feel to people. That's your opportunity to say, you're in a new space, we want you to relax and enjoy yourself while you're here. The next area that you notice is the tray pickup area. This is where we start getting into what materials you would need to use in these spaces, as well as how they would be integrated into the rest of your retail space. Note that the tray pickup area should be located near the entry. You want people to be able to grab their tray immediately and walk through the space. It needs to be noticeable so they're not searching around where to find it. We recommend that you include both trays and cutlery on that unit. Not everyone will pick up their cutlery there, but it's nice to have the option that it is there. The materials here, because it is going to get banged around with trays and it's going to be touched by nearly every person that walks in your retail facility, so your materials need to be highly durable. Our recommendation would be for solid surface tops, and we'll get into more detail about solid surface tops further on down, as well as high-pressure laminates for the space. Most of you are familiar with laminates and probably with solid surfaces as well, but we will get into a little more detail on that as we move forward. Moving on around the retail space, we're looking at things that we need to do for the entree food venues. We like to make sure that there is a distinct difference between the types of food served within the retail space. You can do this in many ways. You can do it through signage. You can do it through countertop or cabinet-faced colors, accent colors on your soffits that may come over top of your serving line, lighting. There's lighting that can go into your food shields, and they actually have different lighting that will highlight different types of food. We use an awful lot of light heat lamps that are already integrated into the food shields, so that's certainly an option. But even within the heat lamps, there's different values of light that can enhance meats versus a different kind of bulb that would enhance colder foods or salads or that kind of thing when you're not needing heat. So definitely lighting is an important factor in highlighting your food. In addition to that, again, highly durable materials, certainly can't stress that enough. We recommend quartz solid surface on most of our food venues, particularly anywhere where there's hot and cold foods being served out of one location. We'll get into more details again on that as we move forward. The front of your serving counter can really be just about anything that you would like for it to be. Laminates, tiles, all kinds of different opportunities there. In addition to your typical entree food venues, you will have some specialty venues probably throughout your facility. The picture with the blue countertop is particularly cold, and it's done that intentionally. It is the beverage island. All of the cold beverages are served from that space, so we wanted it to have sort of a cooling effect compared to some of the warmer colors and materials that were placed around it. Again, that's just sort of another psychological thing that you can do to kind of help your customers with wayfinding and what they're drawn to depending on what it is that they're looking for. Again, in these areas as well, you would use lighting to enhance the mood and the foods that you're serving or beverages that you're serving in that area. The photograph at the bottom is specifically desserts. You'll notice that it sort of has sherbet colors, definitely a little lighter and more whimsical than some of the other things. You're trying to draw people's attention there because that's a space that you want them to go to. They may not have thought about getting dessert today, but gosh, that venue looks so interesting. Let me go see what's over there. And in doing that, you've increased your revenue just a little bit with hopefully each person, or at least a good percentage of the folks that come through. The venue that you can see behind that is an international venue, and it's very different in materials than what the dessert venue is. That goes back to sort of creating specialty venues and letting them draw the attention to themselves. An important factor in any healthcare food service facility is your grab-and-go areas. We all know that our staff do not get much time for lunch or dinner. Typically for them, they're going to come in, grab what they can get, and either take it out to the dining room in a to-go container or even take it back to their office or their workspace throughout the hospital. So we suggest that anytime you can, you locate your grab-and-go areas where there's minimum traffic, hopefully close to the cashiers so that they literally can run in, get what they need, get to the cashier, and get back to either work or to the dining room, whichever they're going to. In addition to this, you need to make sure that you offer a good variety of things because typically the folks that are using your grab-and-go are using it on a pretty regular basis, and we want to be able to offer, you know, even the daily special over in that area so that they don't feel like they're missing out just because they only have 20 minutes to get in and get out. We also like when we can sort of design the grab-and-go areas into the facility so they become consistent with whatever other branding you may have going on. In some cases, we will put the grab-and-goes throughout the space, always making sure that there's plenty close to the doorway and close to the cashier area. The picture that's up towards the top on this particular slide, there is a grab-and-go located right within the rest of that kiosk. So even in a remote situation, you've got the opportunity for somebody to go in there and grab a packaged sandwich and scoot on out the door. Cashier stands, I know this is probably a bone of contention for most operators. There always seems to be a line during your peak hours. You're never going to get rid of that completely, and you certainly don't want to because that means that you're busy, and that's good for your revenue and for the hospital overall. But there are some things you can do to help enhance those areas. We suggest putting in areas for impulse items at your cashier stand. Again, helps your revenue, brings up your check average in those areas. If you'll notice on the picture on the top right, there's shelving all the way around underneath the countertop where you can pop in a few impulse items. And there's also room on the front of each of those for impulse items as well. We try to design our cashier stands so that they're two-sided, but usually with one operator. That way they can go from side to side. And we have found that that is a more efficient way to get people through the cashier area. In addition to providing a space for impulse items, it's also a good thing to change up your ceiling if you have the opportunity, or your flooring, to draw attention to your cashier area. people that have never been in your hospital cafeteria before, it helps them tremendously with wayfinding. They've kind of gotten turned around walking through, making their decisions, and it helps them identify where they need to go to be able to check out and move on to the dining room. So you will see in all of these photographs there is either a ceiling change or a flooring change or something going on that indicates kind of a pull to that area. Moving on to the condiment counter, it's a necessary evil. We all know that it can be a very messy space in your retail facility, but you have to have it. So since you're going to have it anyway, we suggest that you locate it sort of centrally between your cashier area and your dining area, and make sure that you provide plenty of space in front of it, because you know that everybody that has just come out of the retail servery area is going to be making a stop there for something. In addition to that, we know that we've already told you to put cutlery at your tray pickup area, but for those folks that did not pick it up when they picked up their tray, you're going to have space for that out here as well. And you see on the bottom photographs, and we intentionally put photographs that were not loaded so you could see the actual countertop itself. There is space for napkins, there's space for cutlery, and then there's condiments. The photograph above that, though, you'll notice that there's duplication of some of the areas. We know that things like the ketchup and the mustard and salt and pepper are going to be used by more people. So if you can get duplicates of those on one counter, if you have space, that also helps ease the crowding. This is another area where highly durable materials are needed, because just about everybody that walks in your facility is going to touch that at some point. They're going to be banging trays against the countertop. They're going to stick their knee up against the front of the casework to help balance their tray while they're holding their kids' hands. And, you know, we've all seen it before. So, again, another space of highly durable materials there. As you move past the condiment counter, you're going to go into your dining room. This is a space that really offers a respite for both visitors to the hospital and for staff. So we like the idea of providing a variety of seating options, larger parties, smaller parties, sort of, you know, private spaces for someone that just isn't in the mood to deal with other people that day. You know, we get all kinds walking through these spaces on a daily basis. If you have a large, vast dining room, we highly recommend that you figure out a way to, excuse me, to separate it. And in the photograph at the top, you'll notice that there is a wood veneer. It's actually a wood laminate on the column build-outs, and it separates that dining room with a low wall to make it into two spaces so it doesn't feel so vast and cavernous. Other ways that you can help warm up the dining room, the picture in the middle, we've got a wood ceiling in there as well as carpet on the floor. It just helps sort of humanize the large space and warm it up a bit. The other thing I think it's important to remember is outdoor dining. If you have a climate where you can eat outside even a few months of the year, it provides a really nice break for both staff and visitors in your hospital. And all too often, that area seems to be overlooked. We're going to get into a little more specifics now on the materials that I've sort of touched on in each of the different areas. One of the ones that you heard me talk about a lot was the solid surface counters. There are a variety of solid surface counters available on the market. I have mentioned in here just a few that we use on a regular basis. There are certainly other brands, and I don't mean to disclude anyone, but you know, there's only so much room on each slide. The quartz solid surface that I mentioned before is the only kind of solid surface countertop that we will specify for a food service counter where there is actually hot food and cold food being served out of the same venue. The reason for this is solid surfaces like corian and ebonite have a lot of polyester in them, which I know sounds odd, but trust me. And polyester does not hold up well to the hot-cold transfer that happens when you turn those heating units on, turn them back off. When you have a cold unit next to a hot unit, there's a lot of thermal transfer in there, and it can cause those polyesters to break down, and that's when you get cracking in your countertops. So this is part of the, more bang for your buck deal. Go ahead and put the money into the quartz solid surface anywhere that you can, because one, you're going to get a great look out of it, and two, it's going to last you a lot longer, and you're going to have a lot more maintenance-friendly experience with it. Other solid surfaces that are okay for areas like beverage counters and condiment counters would be the corians, the ebonites, Formica solid surface, things that you typically would see used residentially. As long as you're not having that hot-cold transfer, those items are certainly more cost-effective than the quartz solid surface and will perform perfectly fine in areas like I just mentioned, plus even cashier stands. Certainly you can use them there as well. Moving on to the face of the counter, there are virtually limitless possibilities here. You can use everything from a laminate to a metal to a tile on the face of your counter. It all depends on the look that you want. And if you look at the many different options shown here on this page, some are very traditional, like the cherry wood laminate. Some are very contemporary, like the orange metal bubbles that you see below that. So it really is just a matter of what your imagination and your budget will allow. The laminates, of course, are going to give you the most for your money, so to speak, and you certainly can do even intricate designs with laminate on the face of a counter to create the look and the feel and the mood that you want without breaking the budget, because laminate is one of your most cost-effective options there. In addition to laminate, we use a lot of metals on the front of cabinet of serving counters because we find that it adds a bit of the unexpected in a food service retail area. Stainless steel can certainly be used effectively. We've used stainless steel in combination with other metals as well. There are endless opportunities out there, and it really is just limited by your imagination and or your designer's imagination for the mood that you want to create in your space. There are other items that are available. One company that comes to mind is called Cebu, and they have metals, but they also have some plastics that really create an interesting look. It's easy to work with. The fabricators that are replacing your counter front or building your new one will love working with the material. It's going to be a little more than a laminate, but not as much as a metal, so it's certainly an option for you to be able to get a different look without breaking the bank. The sample on the bottom left, the red with the silver dots in it, is an example of the Cebu. Another idea for your counter fronts is a 3-form, which is a resin material. The next 3 samples are actually examples of the 3-form. 3-form can be used, put right up against whatever the substrate of your cabinet is, or a lot of times we'll put lighting behind it and lift it off of that counter front a little bit, and it has a glowing effect, which definitely brings attention to your counter. We like to use that method particularly if we're doing a kiosk in a remote area of the hospital, because it's not necessarily a destination like the cafeteria is. It brings attention to that venue and helps people, with wayfinding to get over there and see what's offered in that space. There's a lot of information to cover here, and I feel like I'm just racing through and giving you little tiny snippets of ideas. Hopefully you'll ask questions or contact me down the road if you want further specific information. Moving on to the floor, though, this is another area where we talked about several times changing your floor material from one space to another as a means of wayfinding for your customers. Carpet tiles is something that we use frequently in the dining areas. It offers a warmth that you don't necessarily have with a hard surface flooring material. It also offers you some acoustic properties. You don't get the echo effect or helps absorb some of the sound in what otherwise would probably be a very noisy dining room. We recommend carpet tiles as opposed to a 12-foot roll good carpet, because if you do get a stain on there that you just absolutely cannot get out, you can replace one tile as opposed to having to replace the entire flooring. In addition to carpet tiles, in the serving area both, we recommend vinyl and linoleum tiles. Some of the manufacturers that we use a lot of are the Centivo, Mannington, Forbo that you see listed. There's a million of them out there. One of the things I like about these three in particular is they're all maintenance friendly and that they don't have to be waxed, which is a huge savings money-wise and labor-wise for the folks that are doing the cleaning in your facility. These tiles can offer a variety of looks. You can use them in conjunction with one another to create accent areas if you're trying to draw attention to a particular venue. You can have the warmth of a wood look without having the maintenance of a wood floor. You can get a stone look, iridescent tiles, I mean literally endless opportunities. In addition to the vinyl linoleum, you've got ceramic or porcelain tiles. These are especially effective in your serving area because they do have some non-slip properties to them, more so even than a vinyl or a linoleum typically. You have to be careful, of course. You would not want to put a high-polished marble in there because we all know what happens to marble when it gets wet. But a textured ceramic or porcelain tile can offer you a very warm look and still provide you with some slip resistance for the safety of your diners. Nope. My computer's playing tricks on me. Moving into some more material specifics.
Nancy?
Your wall.
Nancy,
Yes.
can I stop for a minute? I know that some of you, I saw some questions and you had asked about handouts in the webinar. Just a housekeeping tip, the webinar and the certification and the PowerPoint will be posted on the website in the next few days, so that question of guessing. And also, if you have any other questions about the particulars, because I know there's some that come through, we will get to them at the end of Nancy's webinar. Nancy, sorry about that, but I saw a lot of questions come through on that. Okay.
No, you're fine. Thank you. Okay, more material specifics. A great way to get some really fabulous accent in your space is with vinyl wall covering. There's a lot of facility folks that will fight us on this because they have concerns about the maintenance of it, but the reality is the wall covering is a great way to bring a color punch or a pattern punch into your space. And vinyl wall covering, if it's the correct kind, which hopefully your designer will make sure that it is, the vinyl wall covering is highly scrubbable. Many of them can even be cleaned with bleach with no color change. So it's one of our go-to materials for any time that we want a punch of color or pattern or both on the wall. And again, only limited by yours and your designer's creativity. There's an example here of several different wall coverings from several different manufacturers. So again, just limitless. In addition to the vinyl wall covering, certainly we use a good bit of tile on the walls as well. We will almost always use tile on the back walls of the serving counters so that you have a warm feel back there as your customers are standing waiting on their food. But in addition to that area, you can certainly use it in other areas of the servery itself and carry it on into the dining room. Tile can create a sense of warmth depending on the tile that you use, but you can also do something a little funky and a little unexpected using something like a glass tile in an unusual color to bring attention to a wall that may otherwise kind of be ignored, or to bring attention to a space where you have your specials for the day, something that sets itself apart from the rest of the facility. Moving on to ceilings, this is often an overlooked part of your space, and it's a very important part of your space. There's so much that can be done to ceilings to enhance the overall feel of what you've got going on in your facility. If you'll notice the picture on the top left, again, the use of the wood ceiling, it really brings drama and warmth to your space. It can be used in the dining room. It can even be used in the servery. The top right picture are a wonderful way to bring down a ceiling height if you happen to have a facility that has a 2- or 3-story ceiling height. Oftentimes we'll find that serveries, not so much serveries, but dining rooms are sort of in an atrium area of a hospital where you may have significant ceiling height. But what that does is it sort of makes it feel kind of like an inhuman space. And if you have an opportunity to bring some feature pieces down in that space, it helps warm it up and make it feel just more human-friendly, so to speak. Typically what you would find in your ceiling is what you see in the bottom two pictures, the regular acoustic tiles. There's a particular one that you have to use where there's food prep because it's highly cleanable, and then just a standard ceiling tile in most of the other areas. Where you would use the wood and the drops from the ceiling are places where you want to bring attention, or places where you have that high ceiling height to bring the ceiling down a little bit, create warmth, change up a pattern for wayfinding. There's all kinds of uses for various ceiling heights and ceiling materials. We're going to go through just a few photographs now of some facilities. Some of you may have seen a few of these in other presentations that I've done, but I want to call out certain things in each of these that makes this sort of set itself apart from another facility. In this one, you notice that we have both arches and lighting above each serving counter. We have ceiling shapes even above the beverage counter on the left that bring attention to it. We have contrasting tiles on the walls to let you know that you've ended one venue and you're starting towards the next one. And one thing in particular, if you look on that salad bar, the decorative items on there, sometimes having something purely for a decorative purpose is perfectly fine, because what that does is warms up that space and draws attention to it, particularly something like a salad bar, because, you know, we're trying to get all of our customers to eat a bit healthier, and maybe that'll help bring their attention over there. In this particular shot, you notice that there's a change in flooring in front of this venue that sort of gravitates you in that direction. There's an opportunity for impulse items right there on the venue itself. There's a variety of wood tones that sort of get your attention even from across the room, as well as the signage, which is rather attention-grabbing in and of itself. The perspective of this photograph is not fabulous, but it shows us a lot of different things. If you notice the floor changes, we have a ceramic floor for the path of travel and for around the condiment stand, because we know that that's where spills happen the most, and it's going to get the most wear and tear in terms of daily traffic. But on either side of that, the dining area itself actually has a carpet tile on it. Because of the glass wall, you can see all the way into the servery. Our condiment counter is centrally located. It's actually on both sides of that glass wall. There is a grab-and-go unit very close to the door, literally right between the doorway and the cashier stand. So very conveniently located for folks that need to run in or run out quickly. And then the rest of the servery offers hot items that can be chosen by the customer. This is just a larger photograph of the one that I was talking about earlier with the dessert menu. Because of the colors being a little more whimsical, it does draw attention to itself, and you may get somebody to get a dessert and raise a check average that otherwise would have just passed right by it because it didn't speak to them or didn't grab their attention. You also notice above that menu, there's a lot going on with the ceiling that's also meant to grab your attention. The menu behind the dessert menu is a good example of different metals being used on a counter front. This next photograph, in this particular facility, there was really very, very little ceiling height that we could do much of anything with. But you will notice that we put in some drywall ceiling just above the counters to bring in a little bit different lighting for the venues and create as much of a different feel as we could in that space. And even doing that helped some. You'll also notice that there is a grab-and-go directly adjacent to that venue that offers items from that venue for those folks that are in a hurry. This next photograph is a good example of an entrance. Now this is more of a kiosk in a remote area, but because of the glass pane door and that tiny little signage outside, it really does capture your attention as you're walking down the corridor. And as you glance in, the wall color and the warm woods of the cabinetry sort of pull you inside to see, you know, it kind of makes you want to have a better idea of what's going on in there. And once you're in, the likelihood of purchasing something is pretty high. In this photograph, the things I want you to note in particular are, one, it's curved. Curves are a great way to make a space feel comfortable for people. Curves tend to be, well, any organic shape really tends to be more comforting to people than hard edges and angles and squares and that kind of thing. So the curve was definitely something I wanted you to take note of. In addition to that, you will see that there's ceiling height changes that take place above all the different counter areas. There are flooring material changes that sort of direct you through the space, and when you veer off, you're veering off intently to go to a particular venue, that it really just sort of moves you through the space. There's also space on all of these different serving counters for some impulse items that you may otherwise not have your folks purchasing. This is a good example of a cashier area. It's a larger photo of one of the ones that was in there earlier. You can see that there are many, in my opinion a little too many, but many impulse items adjacent to the cashier area, but there's also opportunity for impulse items on the actual cashier stand itself. You will note that there is a ceiling change above that cashier that helps folks, again, with wayfinding as they're moving out of the servery towards the dining room, kind of directs them where they need to go. And also I want you to look on into the dining room there where you have the curved low walls. One, again, the curve is friendly, and that low wall helps separate the space without closing it off completely. So it gives you a little bit of feeling of intimacy without putting up actual full-height walls. This next photograph, you will notice that there is space again for impulse items. There is an action area at this particular venue. You can tell that because the hood is above, and that's where someone is actually cooking things live right in front of the customer while they wait for it. A very good attention getter in a space such as this. This next photograph, you will notice that there are flooring changes and ceiling changes at every different venue. This is probably one of the least used but most effective ways to draw attention to the spaces that you're trying to draw attention to. It's not terribly expensive to build a soffit down. It's certainly not terribly expensive, particularly if you're changing out your floor anyway, to put some accent flooring around some of your venues to draw attention to them. And it also kind of denotes where the common circulation space is, and if I'm standing over here, I'm here for a reason. Also note on this, the signage. While this signage is very, very clean and crisp, there's certainly no question about where you are. I prefer this particular photograph to the one just prior to it because it brings a little more color in, and I love color. The signage in this is more colorful. You've got things going on the ceiling and on the floor, even though you don't have a tremendous amount of ceiling height to work with. There's still an accent there, and it's not a difficult thing to build that down, put some lighting in it. You can even make it a different color from the rest of the ceiling to really make it pop. That's one of their feature venues within this space, so they want attention drawn to it. You've got also, of course, some flooring accents that sort of mirror what's happening in the ceiling there. And then the last photograph that we're going to look at is a remote kiosk. This is a large one, but it's a large hospital. You will notice that there are spaces for grab-and-go items on the countertop that the customer can get to. There's a beverage area there that the customer can get to. There is refrigeration in the back side of that venue that can house anything from sandwiches to salads to hot entrees that need to be microwaved. But it's just putting your product in another area of the hospital that otherwise would not have food for the folks that are in, say, the clinic or the MOB or somewhere else on campus. And make sure, if you have the opportunity, that you also provide a bit of seating for those folks, as we have here. You'll notice that the front of this venue is a combination of woods and metals, very attention-grabbing when you walk in the door, with the lighting showing up on the menu. It really just makes a statement and draws attention to itself. And that's sort of the whole point. You want people to come and you want them to eat and you want them to relax and enjoy your space. So whatever you can do to help make that happen is only going to enhance what you've got happening already in your facility. I would like very much to thank Alluserv for inviting me to participate. I have enjoyed doing these webinars. Hopefully you've gotten a little bit of information out of them, and I certainly am always available for further questions, or if you have a particular need in your facility, I am more than happy to answer questions and help you with that any way that I can. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nancy. And some of the questions that I've gotten is if you had to get started, what's the first thing you do? And the second question with that is, what's the most cost-effective item within that cafeteria to start with? With budgets the way they are, you know, if they had to do one thing or one or two things, what should they do first, and how could they make the biggest impact?
Okay, as far as how to get started, I think the first thing you need to do is look around your environment and see what may be screaming to you that it's out of place, or what may be screaming to you that it is completely easy to ignore. In other words, something that needs to be a feature item that isn't. So, you know, you can kind of look at that from two different perspectives. What is screaming that needs to go away and be something different, and what needs to pop that isn't really making itself obvious at this point. In addition to that, we oftentimes start with color. If you're looking for a truly, truly value-engineered way to make a difference, put some fresh paint on the wall, make an accent wall. Those are very, very low-budget ways to start out. Other things that are going to make a big impact, anytime that you can change a countertop or a counter face or both, that'll make an impact. If you can change out a portion or all of your flooring and create some accent areas that draw attention to the venue that they may be adjacent to, that's a great place to start. I mentioned how the flooring and the ceiling treatments can often be overlooked, but can be a very cost-effective way to make really a very noticeable difference in what it is that you're trying to highlight in your space. I hope that helps answer that.
One of the other questions was that if you walk into the cafeteria, they said they walked into their cafeteria and they looked around, and it's a long-term facility, and it's more of a retirement, and you know, economics, they've done the paint, but it still doesn't have that wow look, and they're looking for something to be creative but not spend a lot. They've done the paint.
Okay, without walking in there myself, it's hard to just put a finger on it, but again, I would say flooring and ceiling is probably your next place to go if you are really concerned about budget. You can make some significant changes there and create some patterns and some excitement without a tremendous amount of money being spent. Next up after that would be probably changing out counters or counter fronts, depending on how you serve your folks. I don't know if it's table service that you're doing there or if it's more of a buffet line, but whatever elements that are holding the food that are visible to customers would probably be the third thing that I would look at if you're looking at it strictly from what can I spend the least amount of money on. So flooring.
And Nancy, one other question is, what resources are out there, obviously besides you, that they can go to? Is there anything on the website, anything they should Google to get ideas as far as, I know that we did another webinar on color, and that's posted on the website, Alluserv website, to help them think about different colorings. We've done that. But is there any other resources they can go to allow them to at least make some subtle changes?
I read Healthcare Foodservice magazine, hospital design magazines. It's hard to necessarily find things that focus directly on the food service operation itself when you're looking at something like a hospital design magazine. But there are, you know, some publications out there. Even Food Service Director magazine will do a highlight of a facility that you may be able to garner some ideas from. You know, I use Google all the time for various things, and certainly you could try Googling, you know, healthcare food service publications and surely you will see some pictures that may inspire you.
Well, thank you, Nancy, again, and that's all the questions for today. If you have any others after you get off and you'd like to send them to me, it's mdiamond@alluserv.com. Again, my name is Marcia Diamond, and I'm doing business development with Alluserv. And again, Nancy, thank you for sharing your expertise and your time with the group today to give them some creative ways to inspire them to go back to their sites and make a change so that there is a wow in their environments where they're working and for their customers. Thank you again. Everyone have a wonderful afternoon.